shining the light on the lunatics on the left. They mock him.
I just think you're dumb.
Hillary's book blamed him.
A prominent Trump supporter, Aubrey Shines, produced an online video attacking me.
John Oliver mocks him, calls him a nut job from Tampa. Trump thanked him. So he continues to shine the light.
We can do better, we will do better, but we'll only make it happen if you are informed. That's what we're here to do.
America shines when you're connected to Aubrey Shines. Here's your host, Aubrey Shines.
Hello and welcome to America Shines. I'm your host, Aubrey Shines. The American justice system, once held as a beacon of fairness and equality, is facing a reckoning as growing divide becomes very evident. Recent developments, including the alleged corruption within the Biden family and the indictment of former President Donald Trump, sheds light on what appears to be a two-tiered approach to justice. People are noticing how the blindfolds have been removed and the scales of Lady Justice are tilting in a way that favors the progressive and Marxist ideologies in all manners of life. So, fellow Americans, the call to action is resounding. How much longer will you wait to engage, to get involved politically, to hold the media accountable, to hold your elected representatives accountable? The future of our nation hangs in the balance, awaiting the answer to this pivotal question. In just a little while, Reverend Dean Nelson, who is the chairman of the board for the Douglas Leadership Institute, will join us. You want to stay around for that because Reverend Nelson is one of those that is answering the call to action. I want to jump right in here. There are a lot of things that are going on in our nation, and I believe it's what you call a deflection. A lot of us remember the old movie called The Wizard of Oz, where finally the wizard was exposed, and he was kind of hiding behind a curtain. No one knew it until the little small animal, Toto, came and pulled the curtain back. And when he did, those cast members were able to see that it was just a man. And he was unfortunately a very nefarious fella. And he had been playing games with a group of people for a long time. I really use that as a metaphor to talk about what's going on in our nation. There are so many catastrophic things that are going on. It's almost impossible to just put our finger just on one part of it. So what we're going to do in this program, I'm going to give you the proper ammunition that you'll be well informed. This is what we do. We shine the light on issues like this every single week. That way, when you are informed, you can inform others. See, if we lose this nation because of this type of shenanigans that we're watching day in and day out, we may not ever recover. I hope and pray that we never get to a point in this great country that we assume, oh, it'll just bounce back automatically. To have that position, one would have to actually divorce themselves of history, because every nation that has been successful, study it, look at the particulars, and you'll find some common themes. And that is, it's usually not one nation dominating another that causes its collapse. What you really find in the most successful republics is an implosion. That is simply, it's a catastrophic boom, not from the outside in, but from the inside out. I think one of the most fundamental things that this nation was founded on was the idea that you and I could put men and women in office who would represent our views. However, if that's broken, and if the system that does that is broken and is not corrected, then that means someone else, just like the Wizard of Oz, is pulling the strings. Cleta Mitchell is one of those individuals who have exposed this. I wish we had time to have brought her in. We'll get to that perhaps in just a few weeks. But the body of work that she's done has really been incredible. I've worked with organizations like this for some time, dealing with basically integrity within our voting. See, if there is no integrity, people will lose heart. They won't vote because they'll feel, well, what difference does it make? We're no different than Venezuela. We're no different than any banana republic where it doesn't matter what the people really say. It's the people in power that's going to continue to pull the levers on our behalf. It's only when you and I get involved that we can change it. I want to show you a clip of Miss Mitchell and just some of the numbers. We're going to go to this in Georgia. I want you to see what's going on, and we're going to pull these pieces together in just a few moments. Let's go to the clip.
This is a really, I've been dealing with this. I've had this 50-pound weight on my back for 2.5 years. I've had a bar complaint filed against me because I represented the president in the post-election in Georgia. And I can just tell you what I've said before, and they want to put me in jail for saying this. But there are more votes that were cast and counted in Georgia that violated Georgia state law than the margin between President Trump and Joe Biden.
I hope you caught that. These are well-documented things that her organization has done. I've been very privy in the last few years of seeing some of this hard data, and I wish we would have taken time to really just kind of break down some of the numbers that she was able to present. But there were literally hundreds of thousands of quote, votes that didn't even exist. I want you to imagine this for a moment, and I'll use a fictitious number. Imagine a state has 20 million votes or registered individuals to vote, but some kind of way 22 million people actually vote. Well, you would go, well, that's a slam dunk. That's a no-brainer. Well, this is exactly what her organization has found. She was actually able, and we'll make sure that that whole clip is provided for you. She was actually able to break down the numbers. They did all of the right things. They went, they filed, but no judge has ever been appointed to the case. I want you to imagine for just a moment, had these numbers been against, let's say, someone like Barack Obama. Can you imagine the outrage in this nation? The buildings that would begin to burn? How people would begin to loot stores for no reason. It would have nothing to do with voting, but the level of anger people would have because the person that they would have elected, he or she, they're not getting their justice. And this is the type of two-tier system that we're watching here. And that is, we're watching just numbers that it's almost hard to comprehend that things of this magnitude are happening. Here you have the margin, just 14,000 votes that separated Biden from Trump. Yet in Miss Mitchell organization, they literally have hundreds of thousands of votes. Now, one would say, oh, they had their day in court. That's a lie that what I call the legacy media, they continue to spin. They have not had their day in court. Some of the judges that are under prior administrations won't even hear the case. So imagine for just a moment, cases of that magnitude, they're not heard. Well, what would happen in a case like that? It's simple. That means that there's this backlog of data that's out there, unfortunately, that no one is even hearing. Why? It is intentional. It's intentional to continue to rig the votes. And what do? The powers that be, they begin to then indict the former president, which we'll talk about, for just saying something is wrong. Imagine our First Amendment being violated when I don't agree with you. If you're in power, you have the right to put me in jail. I think you're getting it. And this is why our guest today is going to help us navigate through this as well. We're coming right back. You really want to stay tuned.
traitor, up with the star, while we rally round the flag, boys. Once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom.
I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, well, who exactly represents the wizard? Is it a individual? Is it a group? I submit to you it's a group of individuals, but I think one in particular kind of personifies who that wizard really is. I want you to take a close look at him, just in the event you're not familiar with him. His name is George Soros. This guy is a multi-billionaire, and you see right next to him one of the DAs that I believe is very corrupted, because you would say, well, how can I make that quantum leap? It's very easy. If someone is very corrupt and they are bankrolling you, why is it a leap of faith to believe that, well, maybe I'm not corrupt, even though who bankrolls me is corrupt? Well, what is George Soros really doing? I think this next article is really going to be very, very clear to you. Here's an article. I want you to see it for yourself. That, again, gives validity to what I'm saying. This is from Politico. George Soros' quiet overhaul of the U.S. justice system. He's telling you this guy is quietly overhauling our U.S. justice system. I want everyone to pay attention just in the next few words, what I have to say. There are a string of attorneys, and I'm talking about our DAs across this country, that this same gentleman, George Soros, is financially backing. I don't think you're going to find this very hard to digest when I share with you. In every one of these cases, you're going to almost see a direct correlation between what's going on against Donald Trump and these DAs, unfortunately, that are backed by a man that is quietly overhauling our justice system. In other words, George Soros is a devout Marxist. He hates this way of life in America. I've done many shows on this guy, and a lot of people did not realize that he is one of the biggest financial supporters, are you ready for this, of the Democratic Party. If you saw the tons of money that he's poured into the DNC, individuals like Hillary Clinton, and now his strategy is, let's go into various states, let's pour hundreds of millions of dollars in selecting various district attorneys that will represent a Marxist view. And if they can do that, then the people are squashed. Why? Because unfortunately, we're dealing often with people that don't take time to do their research. And here's another unfortunate thing. A lot of places, thank God that it's changing, where people have been getting their data from news agencies. I'm so glad to report to you, and again, this is not my opinion, these are things that are well documented. They're actually the legacy media, NBC, CNN, etc. They're losing their gravitas. They're no longer able to influence to the degree that they were just a few years ago. Why? Because of stations like this, Real America's Voice, and others that are really now becoming the real trailblazers for truth. So George Soros is behind these individuals. Again, don't just take my word for it. Let's look at another clip. I want to show you this here. Just something to keep in your mind. This is a highlight that a lot of us have failed to pay attention to. It just happened in Michigan. You'll see it for yourself here. It's one of those things where we are finding ourselves that we're not able to grab the gravity of this simply because we don't pay attention. I'm going to ask our team to please put that up. Another piece that I want to show you here, and I think you'll be able to grab this as well. The judge in Donald Trump's DC case, please pay attention, this is out of Breitbart News, is actually related to the most influential Marxist revolutionaries. Well, who am I referencing? I'm referencing now the judge that is over the case in Washington, D.C. Again, pay attention. She's related to the most influential Marxist revolutionaries that our country has known. If you study her origin, go back into the area of Jamaica, you will find this. This particular judge, this is who she is. She's actually living out something that the United States should actually be appalled at. And that is, we're no longer exercising who we are as a nation based on the rights and the laws that are part of our nation, but we're now taking our cues from Marxist-led organizations. How in the world can the former president get a a real fair trial when individuals like George Soros and others are behind trying to take him down? I got news for you. This really isn't about Donald Trump as much as you think, or you may think it is. This is about you and I, individuals that just simply love the United States of America. See, if they can destroy him, then it's very easy to destroy you and I. We don't have the financial war chest to be able to ward off these type of individuals if they come. This is why so many people take what's called plea deals. Why? They don't have the money to fight. And when you're being told you're going to serve 1,000 years in jail, I've seen this. I've done the work before. You will just take a deal simply not because you're guilty, but because you can't afford and you're fearing, oh my God, if I'm tried and I don't have proper representation, well, I could spend the next 1,000 years. In other words, I'd die in prison. I'd rather just have 10 or 20 years. At least that'll give me a chance. This is what our nation is up against. When you have Marxist groups, and again, in every area of our lives, this is what we're saying. There's another small little clip I want to show you. It's going on in Michigan. I'm going to ask our team to put this up as well, because these are the key states that we're seeing these type of shenanigans continue to happen. Let's take a look at this headline as it relates to the great state of Michigan. I think this will help us. This is from the Union Bulletin. Michigan now is probing into fraudulent voter registrations referred to the FBI. Don't you find it strange that these things are happening in these key states? Again, I ask you, the audience, why in God's heaven are not other media outlets reporting on this? Why are they not talking about things of this magnitude? I believe I had one more that I would love to be able to show. It shows where the FBI, they're aware of this here. If you guys have that, let's ask our engineers to put that up as well. I think you would be able to see it. It was another headline regarding our FBI chief guy, Ray, and the work, unfortunately, that he's not doing. Can we show that one as well? I think this would help bring a real sense of clarity that's here. Here it is. Chris Wray strikes again. This is from the Gateway Pundit. Georgia election workers are now caught. This is something the FBI has. They've been caught jamming stacks of ballots through machines multiple times. In other words, there's video footage. After observers removed from the building, in other words, those who were there to observe what was going on, they were cleared away by the FBI. Jamming stacks of selected ballots through voting machines is now legal in the USA. Why am I keep going back between Georgia and Michigan? I don't want anyone to forget this. Go back and do your own study. This is what you'll find. That during the 2020 election, all of a sudden, several states, Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, their machines all stopped working at one point. So when we hear, well, there's been no evidence, there's no judge that has overruled it, it's never made it there. But yet, the FBI has this data. I've seen the videos where they're stacking and resending and resending. Now imagine they have the videos, but yet Donald Trump is being tried for saying there's fraud. Yet we have the evidence, watch this, that there was fraud. So I think we're able now to begin to put these pieces of the puzzle together. We're watching this over and over again. I don't care what side of the aisle that you're on. I don't care if Trump wasn't your guy. You shouldn't want this for any elected official. Why? Because it's rigging the system. And this is why we're exposing it on this show today. When I come back with Reverend D. Nelson, I'm going to make something so crystal clear that I think even if you oppose everything he believed in and for, you'd have to agree something is wrong. We'll be right back.
We will welcome to our numbers the loyal, true. cry of freedom.
Even though what we're seeing is obviously a deflection, there are individuals that are out here in groups that are doing such fantastic work. It would behoove all of us to be a little patient. Please know that wherever these dangers continue to show their face, there's always going to be a pushback, because these are men and women that love their God, love their nation. And I'm really excited about, I don't know, maybe several times now, we've had the Frederick Douglass Institute leader, one and only Reverend Dean Nelson, to be with us. His voice of clarity has been one that I think all of us should pay attention. He's soon to join us, but I wanted to read you while you're beholding him. This is what just happened through his organization. It's the U.S. Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C. actually ruled 3-0 in their favor that the federal First Amendment lawsuit of Washington, D.C. can't continue. This is what their decision said. They wrote, "The First Amendment prohibits discrimination on the basis of viewpoint, irrespective of the government's motive. We hold the foundation has plausibly alleged the district discriminated on the basis of viewpoint in the selective enforcement of its defacement ordinance. We therefore reverse," and there's the key word, they reverse the dismissal of the foundation's First Amendment claim and remand for further proceedings. We have with us today Reverend Dean Nelson. He is the leader of the Frederick Douglass Foundation. They collaborated with others. Reverend Nelson, we're going to get to some of the articles that have come out in the Wall Street Journal, Breitbart, etc. But first, we want to welcome you back with our audience as well. Tell us the significance, sir, of this appeal by the appeals court.
Well, thank you so much, Bishop, for allowing me to be back on and for you giving voice to many of us who sometimes feel like we don't have a platform to get our message out. Yeah, basically what this stated from the DC Circuit Court was that the lower court's ruling that sided with the Mayor Bowser in Washington, D.C., saying that we could be discriminated against for what we were trying to speak out. And the backdrop of this story really is, as you remember, in 2020, we had in many cities after the George Floyd incident where people were painting Black Lives Matter, all over the place. There was a lot of destruction of property, and they did that in Washington, D.C. Well, we decided a few months after, joining with Students for Life of America, hey, we wanted to go in front of Planned Parenthood and put Black preborn lives matter, because as I've spoken on your program before, the disproportionate impact of abortion and what it's had on our community. So that was the goal, and we tried to get the permits. We alerted the DC police about what we wanted to do. We showed up, and they said, "No, you're not. Not today. You're not going to paint." And we were going to use washable paint that could be, after our event was over, to be washed away. When students who were with us decided simply to, with chalk, write Black preborn lives matter on the sidewalk, that's when they were arrested. And there's a video of me challenging the police. I went ballistic. They didn't arrest me, but they did send 2 of our protesters that day to jail. And we said that cannot stand. You can't allow one group to paint and have no repercussions at all in the city, and another group not to be able to do that. And so we were grateful for the 3-0 decision that came out of the DC Circuit Court just 2 days ago.
Reverend Nelson, I want to stay there for just a minute, sir. And here's the reason why. I'm constantly in and out of Washington, D.C., and I remember quite clearly, it was not chalk, by the way, where Black Lives Matters have paint. Now, correct me, sir. I have no problem in exercising humility if I'm wrong, but I remember very distinctly, at least what I thought was literal paint. I'm not talking about, and when the rain comes, it washes it all away. These were paint marks that were on the ground where BLM, on several streets in the Washington, D.C. area, they were allowed to do it. Your organization said, we don't need paint. We just want to have our First Amendment rights exercised. As a matter of fact, we'll use chalk. Have I categorized that, sir, correctly?
You have 100%, Bishop, in Northwest DC. So this is in the same quadrant of Washington, DC, where today, Black Lives Matter, they call it Black Lives Matter Plaza. That paint is still there today. So it's not like a question about whether or not they did or they didn't. That is still there today. And in the same quadrant, probably like a mile from that location is where Planned Parenthood a few years ago built a mega center. We said we wanted to put on the street, and we told them ahead of time that we were going to use paint that could be washed away after our event. We did this in Baltimore. We did this in New York and other cities where we were able to do it, but Washington, D.C. denied us. And we stated that we weren't going to allow that to stand. And we sent that to the lower court. The lower court sided with the mayor and with DC. We challenged it again, going to the DC Circuit Court, and they said this is just unconscionable. You read the decision. I mean, they basically stated that the government cannot choose one group to affirm their speech and deny another group. And so we now have the opportunity to take this case fully forward to challenge the mayor in Washington, D.C. Listen, we understand that there may be people that don't agree with our position on the sanctity of life. They may not agree with us where we challenge Margaret Sanger, who wrote in 1939 to Clarence Gamble, we don't want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. You don't have to agree with that. But you cannot disagree that we have the same right as BLM or any other group to self-express our opinion in the public square.
You know, I'm going to bring Reverend Nelson back here in just a moment because you've just really given us a mouthful. I think one of the questions, sir, when we come back in the next segment that I would love to be able to at least get your opinion on, and that's this. How is it then that you have, and I hate doing the ethnic charge here, but you have this black mayor, black city council people. They continue to go to the black churches in order to put themselves in office. Shouldn't the church, then Reverend Nelson, be fighting against, not because they're black or because they're white, but on principles? We're coming right back after this quick break with Reverend Nelson. He is the chairman of the Frederick Douglass Foundation. I'm so excited that he's with us here today after the courts have ruled in their favor. This is intentional, what's going on in our nation. We must get involved, and we'll be right back with Reverend Nelson to do so.
the cry of freedom.
Reverend Dean Nelson is the chair of the Frederick Douglass Institute. I recommend every one of us that are viewing right now, take a moment, pull this institution up. The body of work that these guys are doing, it's incredible. It just is. I have no other way to express it. We're going to just show a quick clip, and I want to get Reverend Nelson's response to this, because we were told that the riots that were going on in our nation, and I'm not talking about the January 6th where no buildings were burned down, and we now know for a fact the FBI agents were involved in the January 6th. We also know that in the January 6th, the leaders that were, on every mainstream media that was out there, they've all of a sudden destroyed all of their transcripts. The videos are gone. You can't even make this stuff up. Yet an organization like Frederick Douglass Institute, they had to go to court, and thank God they were able to prevail in court. But if we would have listened to our media, they didn't have the same take as Reverend Nelson does. I want to show you a quick clip, and I'm going to get Reverend Nelson's response. Let's go to the clip.
I want to be clear in how I characterize this. This is mostly a protest. It is not, generally speaking, unruly, but fires have been started.
I can't make this up. It seems like something out of a Monty Python comedy show. Here the report is on MSNBC. Buildings are on fire. People are protesting. He has to have security guards. And he's saying, hey, wait a minute. It's actually a very peaceful protest. In other words, the way they categorize Antifa, BLM, burning down cities, causing 20 billion with the B damage. And these were black and brown and white businesses that were just decimated. People worked their entire lives to make sure they had a legacy to leave their kids, perhaps, being burnt down, in the media saying, hey, there's nothing to see behind that curtain right there. Yes, a little fire behind us, but for the most part, it's very peaceable. Reverend Nelson, before I get your comment on that, sir, I want to also go back to the question that I asked prior to the break. Please help our audience at least try to understand, how is it that those that say that they exercise a Judeo-Christian ethos continue to put in individuals like the mayor, the city council people, in the name of their God in political office, yet these individuals categorically have fought against organizations like yours? Reverend Nelson.
Yeah, well, Bishop, number one, again, thank you for allowing us to have a voice, because we believe that what we're doing is right. We stand on the principles of righteousness and justice, which are biblical principles that Frederick Douglass espoused. I'm thinking, number one, of a quote from Frederick Douglass where he said, power concedes nothing it without a demand. It never has, and it never will. Until people like you and I and other people who are in these communities stand up, they're going to continue to do what they think they can get away with. And that's one of the reasons why we did what we did, joining with Students for Life to protest against Planned Parenthood peacefully. And the mayor and the power that she has thinks that she can just, roll over us, by the fact that we tried as law-abiding citizens to let them know that we were going to come out, that we were going to do this. And she sent a whole tribe of officers out there to meet us. But to your point, the reason that so many church people in cities like Washington, D.C. and others do this, there are three reasons, in my opinion. Number one, because the government has gotten enough power and authority where they're the ones that influence some of the clergy. Just like in Hitler's day, they had the opportunity to allow the government to take control of the churches. And that is what has happened through block grants, through other programs. Some of these churches and pastors have gone silent on moral issues because they've been bought. Secondly, there's a disinformation campaign. You've seen it all of the time. Anytime that there is potential opposition, they pull the race card and say they're going to take away your rights. They're going to discriminate against you. And because of our history, so many of us have just this knee-jerk response thinking that that's going to happen, when in most cases, that's really not the truth. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to engage with communities around the country to provide them with truth. And I'm happy to say that eyes are being opened through our partnership with other organizations. As you would know, like the Church of God in Christ, it took 10 years, but we were able to work through that denomination to have one of the strongest pro-life platforms and statements of any denomination really in our country. But it takes time, and we're not going anywhere. We're not shrinking back. Just like you, we're people who stand on the veracity of God's word, and we're willing to empower other people to do it if they gain the courage.
You know, I think in just hearing you, sir, echo what I believe is the heart of all people that love God and love this nation. I've never been a real big fan, personally speaking, of hyphenated language. I believe my Christianity, which is unashamed at my part, always is my lead. I also believe in patriotism because I see it as a biblical dynamic. I remember some of the words of St. Paul where he commanded, and he said very clearly, he said, look, he said, an individual that doesn't take care of their own, he called them worse. In other words, he didn't say they were infidel in thinking. He said they were actually worse than that. And I see these things going on, and I want to get your take on that because, again, I just showed on our opening here, NBC, MSNBC, while the cameras were rolling, cities were being destroyed, buildings on fire, $20 billion plus of damages. Some of these businesses have never been able to resurrect again. Life earnings just shattered. No one's been arrested. Various district attorneys have not only turned a blind eye in the cases of New York and other places, they said, we're not going to prosecute because these black people have suffered enough. So we are watching reverse discrimination. We're watching what I call a real spirit of anarchism that is running rampant, Reverend Nelson, in our nation. When individuals find the Frederick Douglass Institute, what would they find there, sir?
Yes, sir. Well, both from the Douglass Leadership Institute, as you said, and in this case with the lawsuit, the Frederick Douglass Foundation, which is a little bit more of our political entity, they're going to find the foundation, we love to say it, righteousness, justice, liberty, and virtue. Those are kind of our basic pillars, and we try to empower people through truth and through exposure and through opportunity to go into communities to make a difference. We like to say first, we want it applying in our lives first, and then we want to empower other people to do the same. And so whether it is challenging the status quo on the sanctity of human life, whether it is empowering communities from understanding the free market system and how that is a biblical system. You know, it's so funny when I challenge some of these pastors that talk about, you know, socialism, and they gotta go to, you know, to the book of Acts, and they talk about how they all had things in common. And I point out to them, I was like, well, if you read that scripture, you start at the beginning, what does it say? It literally states they had property that they sold. So buying and selling of property is a basic free market principle that you have to have that you don't have in a socialist system. So those are the kind of things that we stand for, strengthening all families, but particularly the black family that has been decimated by horrible public policy over the last 50 years, and educational choice and opportunity. We believe that knowledge is power, and that if you have a foundation of a biblical worldview and build upon that knowledge, you have the opportunity to excel and to be prosperous within your community. And so those are some of the things that we stand for and support people doing throughout the country.
He is the chairman of the board of the Douglass Leadership Institute, the Right Reverend himself, Dean Nelson. He's out there. They're winning, people. These are the things that you're not seeing. This is why we take time here on Real America's Voice to make sure that voices like Reverend Nelson is heard. He is one of the champions in our nation. So glad that he was able to drop by and share that victory in the appeals court. What a tremendous victory it is. We're going to come back and we're going to wrap this up. Again, thank you so much for sharing everything that we're doing. We're hearing your response and we'll be right back. I think we've been incredibly clear that these distractions that we're watching, they are intentional. We showed you some of the key players, how they're doing it through our voting, how they're doing it through rigged elections, how there would be an outcry if there was another group that was in charge and it was doing it to another group, how the media itself is what I call one of the conduits in making sure that we're remaining a divisive but not a united nation. I like watching and studying the etymology of a thing. And I think if we're going to be intellectually honest about how are we here and why do we keep finding ourselves here, there's a few things that I'd like to be able to show you. And I want you to think about this because we didn't see this under the prior administration. And this is what we had. For all of you that think, well, Donald Trump is just a horrible person, let's remember this. And here's the question. What about Trump did you hate? Did you hate that we didn't have any more wars? Did you hate the fact that he was able to broker Middle East peace that we hadn't seen? What about the strongest American economy we have never even registered before in this country? What about the fact that under Trump, there was no inflation? How about this? Our 401ks were actually growing and the market profits were incredible. How about this one? That under Trump, we had some of the lowest gas prices we had seen. And under Trump, we had a secure oil reserve. I'll go further. What about the lower taxes and one of the strongest dollars we had seen? Here's the problem. We're hearing lies now. Again, a deflection. We keep hearing things about the Bidenomics. It's a joke. Everyone knows that it's paying 40% more for groceries and 80+% almost for automobiles, and your gasoline at the pump is all but doubled. And we won't even talk about the heating and the lighting of your homes, the cooling down of your homes. Those numbers, people in trouble. As a matter of fact, we just recorded this week one of the highest levels that we have seen as relates to credit cards. Why? Because people can't afford to just out of their pocket pay for it. They're having to put things now on a credit card. Yet you're being told by the legacy media, the same people that won't tell you the truth on other matters, hey, it's all working out. These policies are really kicking in. What I would like to ask you is, why can't we have an honest conversation as relates to the same political party that keeps giving us the same political crap? And in the words of Reverend Nelson, because of what I call, maybe he didn't quite put it this way, a low IQ, because they're not getting the information they should be getting, we have forgotten our history. I want you to take a look at the Democratic history. The Democrats has been the party of slavery. Again, study it. You'll find that to be true. They weren't just a party of slavery. When that didn't work the way they wanted it to, you'll find out that same party gave you Jim Crow laws. Not only that, we always hear about the Dred v. Scott decision where the Supreme Court said, hey, those black people are not really people. Find out who those justices were. They were appointed by the Democrats. When that didn't work, guess what else they gave us? They gave us the KKK. They gave us the Southern Manifesto. They also opposed the 13th, the 14th, the 15th Amendment. This is all the Democratic Party. And when they couldn't do it that way and really have success, they began to destroy the black family with the welfare state. In other words, they enacted policies that forced black men out of their homes, and they would take care of the black lady as long as she was married to the state and not trying to make it with the black man that helped populate their home. So the state, they oppose school's choice. Again, Democratic Party. In other words, all you parents out there, if your kids are in a bad area and you want them in a better area, better school area, the Democrats don't want you to be able to leave your district and send your kids to another school. They oppose school choice for urban blacks. And on top of it all, here's the rub, and you can't get any sweeter than this. While they're doing all that, and they've been historically all that, they actually will accuse Republicans for refusing to talk about slavery. I can't make this up. Here's their history. There is the data. America shines, we expose it. Often, we get a lot of DMs where people have direct message and they will literally hate. And by the way, these are not blacks that are writing. These are white liberals as well as blacks. They never argue the merits. They just say, don't say that. Because if I expose the dirty laundry, then how can we ever stay in power? My job is to shine the light. Your job is to take this information, share it with your family, share it with your loved ones. People, we can take this nation back. You got to get involved. That's why we do the work every single week here at America Shines. I'll see you again next week.